Now on Talking Solutions, we want to welcome back Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel from the Nevada Highway Patrol.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Last time you were in, we were talking about impaired driving, which is always a problem, not just in Las Vegas, but everywhere. And I suppose we have extra challenges here, what with no last call and things like that.
Right.
But this time, the topic of impaired driving, now that our marijuana laws are changing for recreational use, maybe this would be a good time to address that issue.
Yeah, definitely. And like we were talking before the show, the message never changes, unfortunately. That's why we have to keep talking about it and bringing it back up. But yeah, we normally are focusing on impaired driving when it comes to alcohol. But like you said, the marijuana laws are changing. Medical use has been legal for some time, but now recreational use is legal. We want to make sure people understand that just because it's legal to use it, it doesn't make it legal to drive when you're using it. We don't want people getting behind the wheel impaired with alcohol or marijuana, and we want people to realize that they are impaired when they use that substance.
Well, now that it's legal, everything's fine, right? Is that the mindset that you're dealing with?
The mindset a lot of times is that marijuana doesn't impair you as much as alcohol does. People know that alcohol impairs them and they know that it's dangerous to drive. Obviously, they make bad decisions once they start consuming the alcohol and choose to get behind the wheel because they think they're okay. And we don't want the same thing to happen with marijuana. And a lot of times users think that it doesn't impair them as much as alcohol does. But a lot of times we see both substances on board, numerous substances. But we want people to understand that they are just as impaired using marijuana as they are when they use alcohol. It's just as dangerous. The laws are the same. You can't drive high.
Regardless of our recent change in the laws as far as the state of Nevada, when it comes to recreational marijuana use, this has to have been a subject that you guys have dealt with all along, because there's always been what we call stoners in cars, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's nothing new. People have driven impaired for years, unfortunately. We're trying to obviously bring an end to that. But as we talked, we have to keep bringing up this message and reminding people we have always dealt with marijuana. We just don't want it to get worse. Obviously, we want people to continue being safe and know that we don't have a problem with you using it legally like you're supposed to, but just don't get behind the wheel of a vehicle. Get a sober ride just as if you're drinking. Don't get behind the wheel. Have that plan just like as if you're going out to have beers at the bar. If you're going to be consuming marijuana at your home, don't get in that vehicle to drive.
We have so many options these days, what with Uber and Lyft and friends who are designated drivers. There shouldn't be an excuse for anyone.
Yeah, there absolutely is not an excuse. But like we talked about, people consume the marijuana or the different types of drugs or alcohol, and then they're impaired and they think that they're okay. They make those bad cognitive decisions. So we have to educate people, and that's what we're trying to do beforehand. Please just have a plan. Like you said, there's so many options, and most of them are so inexpensive now. With the ride shares, friends, like you said, family members. I have never met a family member who said they would be more upset getting woken up to go pick up a family member rather than the latter, getting that phone call or knock on the door that something happened to their loved one or their loved one got arrested because they hurt somebody else.
We're talking with Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel, returning with the Nevada Highway Patrol about impaired driving. And now that we've had a change of the laws here in the state of Nevada, we're specifically addressing marijuana use and how it also creates impaired drivers. And that's something we so don't want. One of the best things that I'd seen, Chelsea, is a while back had to do with parents and their teenage kids, because they're going to be kids, right? They're out, they're partying, they're getting their freedom, their independence, but parents are always their safe place. No matter how much trouble you think you're going to get into by going out and partying with your friends, your parents are still there to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many programs out there for new drivers, and one of them is Driver's Edge. If you haven't taken your teen to that already, please do so. It's an awesome hands-on experience. But one of the things we talk about in that program during a session where it's law enforcement officers speaking is getting parents and teens together to have that conversation. Obviously, we don't want to condone the use of substances that they're not supposed to be using until they're 21, but we know that sometimes it happens. We know that people fall to peer pressure. We know they're around it at parties and stuff like that. So we want parents to have that conversation with their kids that if you do happen to make that bad decision to try marijuana or drinking alcohol, know that they can call mom or dad. And yeah, you might be in trouble. Maybe lay out the consequences beforehand so they know, okay, the worst that's going to happen is mom and dad said, I'll have my phone taken away for a month or whatever the consequence may be. But we don't want the kids afraid to call mom and dad. And we want them to know parents need to express that to their kids, that they will be way more upset getting that phone call that something happened to their child rather than calling them, waking them up and telling them, come pick me up.
That's an important conversation to have.
Absolutely.
And I do understand how kids could be scared.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the parent, kids can be petrified of their parents. And I know for us, sometimes stopping kids, doing things they shouldn't be behind the wheel, speeding, rather than a ticket, the best thing is calling mom or dad. They'd rather have the ticket sometimes than that conversation with mom or dad.
Well, you get that early warning when you're growing up from your parent going, if you ever, I will do this. Mm-hmm. And it sounds really severe. But in reality, when parents are faced with the choice, they say, I said that in kind of a hothead moment.
Right.
But when it comes to the safety of my kid, it's a different issue.
Absolutely. But we need adults to be just as responsible with these substances as children.
With impaired driving, we've talked before, Chelsea, about impaired driving with alcohol, which has been an issue since probably the beginning of driving cars, I suppose. But that's an easily measured standard because we hear on the news all the time, so-and-so got caught, they were driving drunk, their blood alcohol level was 0.09, 0.20, whatever horrible number it was.
Right.
But when it comes to marijuana use, do you as troopers have a way to be able to gauge how badly that driver is impaired with marijuana?
That's a great conversation, especially for people themselves. They can buy the preliminary breath test or different devices to try to test themselves when it comes to alcohol. But there's just not that technology out there for people to measure their impairment when it comes to marijuana. Just like with alcohol, they shouldn't be driving if they're consuming alcohol at all. They should have that plan. But yeah, you're right. There isn't that technology for them to test themselves. As a trooper, any police officer will tell you, our main objective when we stop somebody and think that there might be some type of substance on board is just to find out, not any type of level or number. Obviously, the law states a level for both alcohol and marijuana. It's 0.08 for alcohol, and it's 2 nanograms of active metabolite of THC for marijuana. But what does that mean to anybody, really? Our job isn't to look for that number. It's to look for, is this person safe to drive? The totality of everything that's going on, their driving characteristics, how they are functioning just as a person, walking, talking, all of those things come into play, and we have to make that decision. Is this person safe to get behind the wheel of the vehicle, or will they hurt themselves or someone else if we let them continue? So it's a very stressful part of our job because, like you said, it's not an easy exact science. We have preliminary breath tests when it comes to alcohol, and we have those tests back at the jail to confirm numbers, but really it's just that impairment method. Is this person too impaired to drive? And we have trained all of our officers with a number of different tests and things to look for when it comes to impairment so that they can make an educated, good decision.
When you stop a driver and you believe that you're dealing with an impairment, especially a marijuana-related one, do you put them through the same paces that you would with a DUI driver that's alcohol-related, where they have to do the walk along the straight line, that kind of thing?
It's very, very similar. We're looking for similar things. We're also looking for some different things when it comes to marijuana, but we're putting them through those field sobriety tests that are just like alcohol field sobriety tests. They're divided attention tests. They're checking your balance, your ability to divide your attention. So yeah, absolutely. Same test. There are some additional that we can do. We can request that drug recognition experts come to the scene if we think that there is a narcotic on board, like marijuana or maybe, some prescription stuff like that. And they can do further tests. But yes, same exact standardized field sobriety tests.
What about the penalties that a driver might be facing when they are out and impaired with marijuana?
Just like we're talking about with teens being afraid of their parents, we're hoping that, the consequences for driving impaired and the possibility of hurting someone else will deter people from using the substance and getting behind the wheel of a vehicle. But right now, Nevada law is the same for alcohol and marijuana. You can do jail time. You will spend the night in jail if you get arrested until you're sober and able to drive. But your license gets revoked. You have to go through numerous classes, a lot of time and a lot of money, up to $10,000 if you have an attorney and after all of the fees and classes. If you're lucky enough to just get arrested, it's still such a hassle. But imagine if you hurt yourself or someone else, even more that you have to go through.
We are in studio today with Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel from the Nevada Highway Patrol. We're talking about impaired driving, adding in that new element now that marijuana, the recreational use, has been legalized by the voters of our state of Nevada. We talked about the consequences. I know you and I have talked before about how we love having Aaron Breen in to talk about Vulnerable Road Users Project.
Yeah. Yes.
and the sort of things that happen when you hit a pedestrian.
Yeah, it's so traumatizing.
I know that the laws in the state of Nevada have been changed for people who do what we call a hit and run with a pedestrian, and they think that they're better off getting away because they are impaired. We've changed the state laws so that if you do a hit and run of a pedestrian, you take off. It doesn't matter. You're going to be charged exactly the same as if you were impaired.
Yeah, felony charges. It's a very serious thing. And yeah, a lot of times people in the past, if they're impaired, they thought if they left the scene and ran home, they would be okay. And
I'll
they
get
would
sobered up.
Yeah, I'll get sober. And there's no way to prove that I was impaired. And like you said, they've changed the laws now where it's just as harsh if you were impaired. You're going to face felony charges. So it's a very dangerous thing. And even if you're not at fault in a crash, think about how traumatizing it is. And imagine if you are the one responsible for causing all of that damage and hurt to another family. You know, talking about impairment, marijuana changes your reaction times. It slows you down. It changes the way you view things, your depth perception, your distance. We have the marijuana goggles. We did an event at the office the other day. It was pretty cool. We had the reporters out and they got to wear them and drive around on a go-kart and tricycles. And just the difference it makes. Obviously, it's not the same as using the substance, but it really shows you what it's like visually, how much it changes your reaction time and depth perception, all those things. And people just don't realize all that it does to them because they think they feel okay. I feel fine. Just like people say when they're drinking, I feel okay, I'll be okay. But they don't realize a pedestrian can step off the curb, the light can change that quick. Someone can slam on the brakes in front of you that quickly. We see debris in the roadway all the time. Any of those things happens in the blink of an eye. And we see these crashes when people are sober because, you know, it takes us time for our brain to perceive something and react. But imagine our brain being slowed down by that marijuana, and then it takes us even longer to react to one of those things.
The sorts of things that happen with our drivers that we see every day anyway. The fact that people are so distracted by all of the technology that's now available through our devices and our cars.
Yes.
And that's not a situation we should be in anyway. I put my phone in my purse in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
I don't even want to be able to touch it. If I need it, I've got the Bluetooth availability through the car.
Exactly. Because we're all addicted to those phones.
I know it's terrible. It's bad. We've got that going on. Plus, the other thing that I say frequently about our speed limits, that it's just a suggested starting point on many of our roads, that we're all flying through here going faster than we should be, and we're distracted. Now let's add in some impaired driving.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a combination of a lot of bad things. And unfortunately, we have all these things facing us, you know, like you said, the distractions that we have on a day-to-day basis. We live in a 24-hour town, but we're all still in a huge rush all of the time, you know, whether it's because we are running late or we're just in a hurry to get our errands done and stuff like that. So yeah, speed combined with the distractions and then adding the impairment on top of it. We have way too many fatalities as it is. We all know the goal is zero fatalities, which we want to reach it. Every day that we can reach zero is a great day. We don't want to see our numbers increase because of this new change in the marijuana law. Again, we know that people are going to use it. They have their right to use it in their home because of the change in the law, but they don't have the right to drive impaired and take someone else's life.
Is there any kind of a guideline that exists for a recreational or medicinal marijuana user in their home to say, okay, all right, I need to wait 6 hours. I need to wait until tomorrow. I need to not even think about getting in a car. Do we have any windows of time that would be helpful in any way?
That's a great point because the substance and the law changing is so new, but it's very complicated. It metabolizes much differently than alcohol does in your body. We all have heard the myths about drinking coffee, taking a cold shower, all those things to sober up from alcohol, which none of them work. It's
right.
Only the time that it takes to metabolize in your body. But marijuana metabolizes differently, so there really is no set guideline. And just like with alcohol, it depends on how much was in your system. Similar to alcohol too, the marijuana strains and different kinds that you can get are all different levels of THC. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's so different today from the usage in the past is marijuana is so much stronger, so much higher level of THC than it used to be. So very little can impair you, and depending on, you know, what's in the marijuana that you're smoking will depend on how impaired you actually are. So there is no set time frame, and people really don't have a way to judge how impaired they are, like we were talking about. There isn't a device that tells them.
I have friends in Colorado, which of course is one of the first places that did the legalization of marijuana, and they tell me that the marijuana that's out there on the market is, as you said, much stronger than it used to be. I guess they can cultivate it and get the strains to where they're really, really potent.
Yeah, it's just like alcohol, drinking a beer versus a shot of a strong liquor. With the marijuana, it's like a science, you know? You go to these dispensaries and they have it broken down to a science of what you want and how much THC is in there. And then you get the edibles on board or the pills. I mean, it's coming out in so many different forms. So that's why the only safe thing to do is, if you know you're consuming it, not operate a motor vehicle.
So if you're consuming marijuana, today is not a driving day.
Exactly.
And time is the only thing that can really help you.
Yeah, allowing whatever you consumed to metabolize in your body.
Making a mistake in this area when it comes to impaired driving, be it alcohol or marijuana, it's just not worth it. People forget that they're driving cars that weigh thousands of pounds that are just these great big killing machines.
Right. People don't realize it. It is homicide to willingly get behind the steering wheel of, like you said, a couple 1,000-pound steel machine. We call them missiles because they're going down the road at such a high rate of speed, and you kill somebody. It just isn't worth your life. You'll be in prison alongside the people who committed what a normal person might think is a much worse crime, killing someone or raping someone. But you killed someone as well. You knowingly consumed some type of chemical or whatever that impairs you and got behind the wheel of a vehicle, and it's just not worth it. We have to be responsible. That's the only solution, is making good decisions and being responsible. Adults, we all want our children to be responsible. We need to be responsible as well and set a good example for them.
That's a great point. Yeah, how can we tell our kids not to do it if we're not playing by the rules ourselves?
Right, absolutely. And the other thing we didn't really talk about is how dangerous the substance is for children. Being responsible with locking it up. Just like with weapons, we have to make sure our weapons are locked up and safe because children are interested and they see something, they want to play with it or eat it. So when it comes to marijuana, it's just as important to keep it locked up and safe away from kids, especially the edibles. You can't tell the difference between edible marijuana candy and normal candy. I've seen the stuff that looks like Sour Patch and all the different types. It looks the same as normal candy, and we see so many instances now where children are consuming it and getting really ill, ending up in the hospital.
There's a lot of things you need to protect your children from. You mentioned guns, marijuana products. Alcohol has always been in that category. And very recently, we've also had a long discussion about keeping our prescription medications out of the hands of kids. This causes so many problems.
Yep, this is just as dangerous.
There's a lot of dangers, but common sense helps you get through everything.
Absolutely. And a lot of people get frustrated with law enforcement, but we just want people to follow the rules and do it safely and responsibly. We're not trying to take anyone's rights away with these law changes. We just need people to do so responsibly. If you use marijuana for medical purposes and you get frustrated because it helps you, we want you to get that help that you need. And as long as you're following the laws and doing so responsibly and safely, just like with alcohol.
Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel with the Nevada Highway Patrol talking about impaired driving, especially now that we have this new wrinkle. Boy, it's just one more thing for you guys to have to deal with.
Yes.
Impaired driving with that marijuana element. No doubt it has been there before. It's just going to be out in the open a lot more now that the laws have actually changed.
Yep, absolutely. It's always been around. We had stopped cars with it, with people smoking it or just, transporting it in their vehicles. So our job has changed a little bit on a legal sense of how much you can have, if you can have it in your car and that sort of thing. We just are a little bit concerned that because it is legal, people are going to, like you said, start using it more willingly and openly because it is legal and think that it's okay to drive. It's just like prescriptions. So many people think because it's legal and it's prescribed to them, I'm okay to take it and continue on with my life. Well, now that marijuana is legal, just like alcohol, it's not okay to use it and do regular activities like operating a motor vehicle.
It's kind of the same common sense approach that you've given us all the way through, Chelsea. And that is when it comes to impaired driving, if there's any reason at all you shouldn't be driving, you really need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I wish I was a scientist, but I'm not. So breaking down how you metabolize the marijuana and how long you can go after you smoked it, there's so many variables. So it's so hard to give someone, just like with alcohol, it might be a glass of wine for you and 2 beers for me or 4 for the next guy. It all just depends on your body type, what's is in the marijuana, how much you've consumed of it. It's not a black and white answer, but the only black and white there is if you're consuming it, have a plan, have a sober, designated driver, and that's the only thing that we can tell you. And if you drive high, you will get a DUI, just like with alcohol.
That's what I was hearing downstairs. I was talking to Delbert before you came in, and she said, drive high, get a DUI.
Yeah.
And I said, did you just make that up? She goes, no, I saw that someplace.
That's good. It's catching on. We need to make a jingle out of it.
We always ask, as part of Talking Solutions, what can we do to help the Nevada Highway Patrol? Is the best thing that we can do to help you spread awareness on how serious of an issue impaired driving with marijuana is?
Absolutely. And that's what we're here doing now, an educational campaign. We're always going to be out there enforcing the laws and looking for these impaired drivers to keep our community safe and keep Nevada drivers safe. Spreading that message is the best way that people and you guys can help us.
And for parents with kids, have the conversation.
Please.
They're going to be at parties. No doubt you're seeing already, even though it has only been months since we approved by the vote legalization of recreational use of marijuana. Are you already seeing the attitudes change?
A little bit, but the biggest thing to think about is it's going to make it that much easier for kids to get their hands on. We know it was happening before, but it was a little bit more difficult to obtain. But just like alcohol now, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get a hold of.
And after it came out that it was going to be legalized, did the Nevada Highway Patrol have some education for everybody who is a trooper to say, this is what we need to do to approach this?
Yeah, we've been preparing for this. We obviously see the different substances on board already, but we have put all of our troopers through a specialized, it's called A-RIDE training, that's a little bit more extensive than your regular DUI impairment training. So they're trained to look for these different substances on board. And yeah, one of the best parts about our agency is everyone wants to educate. We're not always out there just to write these tickets. And the whole point of the citation is to educate, but sometimes it's merely just the trooper having a conversation with someone. Usually not if they're impaired already. They're going to be having a different conversation with that person. But, just like with speeding or talking on your cell phone, sometimes people just need to have that conversation to change their behavior.
My big word these days, and it happens all the time, I look at people and I say, focus. That's a big deal in my world. In order to do my best job, whatever it is, I need to focus. I think people also need to, when they're driving, learn that we need to focus. Focus on the most important job, and that is to be a safe driver and not endanger yourself, your passengers, or anyone on the roads around you.
Right. Focus on what a big responsibility driving really is. Focus on how dangerous it can be. We're not always thinking about what can happen. And one of the number one things I can say is buckle up. Please buckle up. We're seeing so many fatalities of people who are unbelted, and there's just no excuse for that. And it's such a tragedy when a family has to learn that they lost a loved one because they didn't have their seatbelt on. So please start by buckling up. Not only save your life, but your other passengers in the car. You can injure them if you get tossed around the car and you don't have your seatbelt on. So a lot of times parents make their kids buckle up, but they're not buckling up themselves, and they can injure or kill their children just as easy. So start with that, and then, like you said, focus on everything around you. While you're driving, strictly focus on that driving, and when you get to your destination, handle all of your other business. Arrive alive is what we always say.
And let's remember Delbra's line from downstairs, drive high, get a DUI.
That's right. If you drive high, you will get a DUI, and it doesn't matter if it's a trooper or not. Any other law enforcement agency will work the same way.
Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel from the Nevada Highway Patrol. Have we forgotten anything?
I don't think so. We've talked about a lot.
It's important.
It is. Hopefully everyone at least got one thing, and maybe it's just the drive high and get a DUI, as long as everyone took something away.
We appreciate you coming in when the actual sale part of the recreational marijuana provision comes into play here in the state. Once again, it's already been legalized.
Right.
So it's a more in-your-face issue for all of us now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the law's tricky, and yeah, there's still some more hurdles, but like you said, over half of Nevadans voted for the use of recreational marijuana. We definitely want people just to prepare, and we don't want to see these fatalities rise.
All comes down to being responsible, be safe. Plan ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, the hardest thing is, I know I'm going to go to a party, or I know I'm going to be smoking marijuana. Don't even drive your vehicle, or don't even be tempted to drive it. Like you said, if you plan ahead, you won't be tempted.
And there's lots of options out there.
Yes, so many.
Trooper Chelsea Stuenkel from the Nevada Highway Patrol, thanks so much for joining us today on Talking Solutions.
Thank you for having me.